Hello, deal makers. This is Forrest McGee, and I am with Dealmaker Richmond. And today is Thursday, the 20th of March. It is pretty close to 11 o'clock. I'm only 7 minutes late, so apologies. I apologize very much. But anyway, I'm here, and today we are going to talk about what we learned on March the 6th at our landlord panel, where we had several landlords and their attorney on this panel, and we talked about the good, the bad, the ugly, and why landlord works for them, and their particular strategies that they like and what they don't like, and how to make sure that you come out at the end with the result that you wanted, right? So let's talk about that, right? So landlording is an amazing thing, right? You invest your time, your money, and your future return on a piece of property that you want somebody to move into, pay you a sum of money, a rent every month, and hopefully take care of your property. Hopefully, be a good steward of your property. Hopefully, leave it in a good condition, and hopefully, pay their bills on time. And hopefully, at the end of all that, you've made some money, you've got some equity in the deal after years and years and years, and then you're able to sell the property for a some more than what you purchased it for and the repairs and so forth. So that doesn't always work out, right? We discussed several things. We talked about short term rental landlording, we talked about midterm rental landlording, and long term rental landlording. So let's start at the beginning. Short term rentals, that can be anything from uh, your Airbnb, that can be, your weekly stay place, that can be your beach house, that can be however you want to market it, but we're going to call it less than 30 days. So your 30-day short-term rental, that's the reason why people find that attractive, is because you can take a house that would, let's say, rent for $2,000 a month. Well, by doing it in a shorter term at a daily rate or a weekly rate, you can make more money by having more bookings, because people are willing to pay more by the day or the week as opposed to by the month. Okay, so there's no leases involved. It's usually like just an agreement that they're allowed to stay there for a certain amount of time. They usually have to prepay. So that's the advantage of that. The downside of that is more work, right? Being a short-term landlord isn't so much about real estate as it is about um, the hospitality business. You have to be aware that they need, clean, safe housing. They need clean, safe bedding. Everything needs to be clean every time you turn it over, whether that's, after 3 days or after 2 weeks, has to be clean. You have uh, control issues, right? You have, like, people didn't do what they say they're going to do. People, did more damage, or more cleaning is involved. There's a lot of things that go in there that can chip away at your profit, but done correctly. Oftentimes, using a short-term rental management company that specializes in that, they have their cleaning teams that they use time and time again. They know how to restock the facility. It takes the involvement away from you. Yes, it has a fee, but that fee is oftentimes, a really good benefit, because, it eliminates you having to make sure that there's toilet paper, make sure that, there's dish soap, and et cetera, et cetera. And then so let's talk about the downside of short term. So a lot of communities, a lot of municipalities, a lot of locations look down on that, because they don't want short-term tenants coming into their area and causing a problem. And then another thing, we get into uh revenue, right? They want to make money on the revenue. If somebody goes and stays in a hotel for a day or more, they have to pay taxes on that. And a lot of times, these short-term rental people try to escape that and try to work around it. And then sometimes all it requires is a permit and making sure that you get that tax money where it needs to go. So short-term rental, it's a good strategy if it works in your market, and it's something that you can do legally. um so That's all I got to say about that. Midterm rentals, right? That's kind of like the loophole. That's, you get a little bit more money. It's month to month. Um, but they're, oftentimes professionals that are traveling for work or something, and would prefer to stay in housing as opposed to um, staying in a hotel or an extended stay or something like that. So you're getting that kind of market. Um, one person on the group talked about how she specializes in getting some insurance companies. So insurance companies come to her when somebody's had their property flooded or fire damage or something, where they can go and stay in there for that amount of time. And that's a great niche, right? I mean, because those insurance companies are paying fairly decent money. um and then you have your, like I said, your traveling professionals, and then you have long term. um so long-term landlording is, you say you buy a house, you get in a 1-year lease or 2-year lease with somebody, and you know, they're just paying, month by month, on an annual lease, and then you have your automatic renewals, or you have, where you have to turn over, you have to raise your rents, um, et cetera, et cetera. Or the worst thing happens where well, it's not the worst thing, but bad thing happens where they stop paying, and next thing you know, they got to go, right? And what does that process look like? So, um, the the best thing that I heard, time and time again throughout this landlord panel, and then Fred Kraus called it what it is, the main thing, okay? The main thing in landlording is you have to treat it like a business. It's a business. Mom and pop landlords are going to get used, they're going to get taken advantage of, they're going to have a bad experience, and it's all because they didn't know what they didn't know, they didn't take it like a business, and they allowed themselves to get taken advantage of. Okay? And that's just the long and short of the story. So, treat it like a business, right? What does that mean, right? What does that mean to treat it like a business? Well, your paperwork's got to be right. You have to have a lease. You have to have an agreement in place. Okay. You have to plan on it not working out. The best case scenario is it works out, but if you plan it correctly, if you do your paperwork correctly, when bad things happen to good people, you can minimize the impact to your finances and get that property back into your possession and into control as fast as possible by having your paperwork correct. And then you can lick your wounds, and then you can do it again. Okay. So, um, managing it, right? Self-managing, rentals is a tough business. It's not for everybody, right? You should have enough you should have enough of a business mindset to say that you're not the best person to be calling a plumber on a Saturday morning and going through Facebook asking for who knows a good plumber in Ashland, Virginia, right? That's not your job. Your job is to make sure that your investment is growing, that your investment is in good condition. Okay. And doing that means that you have a professional property management company doing that work for you, and they're the ones that have the plumbers that are already vetted, that already know that they're going to show up when they say they're going to show up, they're going to do what they say they're going to do for a reasonable price. And that takes the burden off you of having to deal with those problems. When let's just when does a problem come up, right, in life in general, right? A problem comes up in life when it's the least convenient time possible, right? That's that's just the way that life works. um Call it God's sense of humor, call it whatever you want to. That's just life. So, make sure that you have a management company in place that takes care of those issues as they arrive, and they take care of the paperwork, and they take care of all the notice to pay or quits and so forth, if that's necessary. um so another thing, treat it like a business. Okay. um I don't know about you, but my grocery bill is going up. Why is my bill going up? Because the cost of doing business has gone up for the people that provide the groceries to the store, right? They're from the gasoline, from the cost of production, from energy costs, whatever it is, the cost goes up. So what do? They pass it on to the customer. No different here. Okay, if you're going to treat your landlording business like a business, like you should be doing it. Your price should be going up every year. Every time annually, you should be going up at a reasonable amount to make sure that you're covering your costs of inflation, you're covering your costs for tax reassessments, you're covering your costs for insurance increases, you're covering your costs to make sure that your reserves are in balance and in line with what you need to do, that you're reserving money for capital improvements, that you're being a business owner the way that you should be. Okay. And that leads me into, having reserves, right? So what does that mean? Right? That means making sure that if the air conditioner breaks, you can afford to pay for it. Okay. That means that if there's a flood in your home, you have the ability to get that remediated correctly and not just sit there and try to do it yourself on a Saturday because you don't have any money and you don't have any choice. Right. I often tell people all the time when we're, you know, working in our real estate business, right? If you have money, you have time, you have options. If you don't have time or you don't have money, your options are truly limited. And oftentimes when you have a lack of resources, that leads you to make less than great choices than what you would have had you had the opportunity or had the network of people or had the money or had the time to make a wise decision. And usually wiser decisions are less expensive in the long run. Okay. So when it goes bad, right? Let's talk about that, right? What about, in getting there's reserves, that goes across, all the types of landlording, okay? Whether it's, commercial spaces or residential spaces, short, mid, long term, whatever it is, okay? You got to have some money in the bank. All right. It went wrong, right? Now what do we do? Well, we talked about some, recent legislation over the last few years that made it to where you have to have proper paperwork in place, and you have to give, the residents, their tenants' rights, I believe is what it's called. You got to give that to them when they sign the lease, and when you don't, guess what? You can't evict them when things go wrong, right? We learned that from Curtis Gordon, who was here this week, and he says, one of the biggest problems is, that landlords are doing it on their own and they're just sending out crappy paperwork that really doesn't mean anything and it's not complete. And so when they go, "Hey, Curtis, this guy's not paying, I want him out of my house," Curtis goes, "Did you give him their, tenant rights?" And you go, "Well, what's that?" He goes, "All right, well, let's start there and then we'll start the clock after we send that to them." And so it adds time when your paperwork's not right. So make sure your paperwork's right. Make sure you have all the documentation. Make sure anytime you have correspondence with them, you're sending them another copy of those tenants' rights. It's just a couple of pieces of paper. What difference does it make? But that way it protects you so that you are always ready to make a big problem as small as possible. All right. So that's treating it like a business. So, you go through the eviction process, you hire the attorney, and, you don't do that yourself. You hire the attorney, you make sure that you do the eviction. Fred says he doesn't do evictions. He does liens on the property or lien on them or something. I forget what he does. But anyway, he was talking about how he doesn't do evictions. He tries to work with them, to get it done, or he liens them in some way or another to where that, he'll get his money someday. Um, and then, you get the eviction, you get the property back in whatever condition it is. You got to make it ready for a new tenant. And all that takes money, takes time, and, it takes your team to do it correctly. But it all starts with the paperwork. So that's it, treat it like a business. So the next thing is, what does the future hold? Right. So, legislatures, what do they like to do? They like to make laws, right? And, who's telling them what laws to make? I mean, who's telling them? Lobbyists, right? Lobbyists are telling them what laws to make. Who's lobbying for, tenants' rights? Who's lobbying for landlords' rights? And so, what voice is stronger? Usually the voice that's louder, the voice that's stronger is the one that is in their ear all the time, that, has a large influence into these legislatures, has a large impact in the community, and it's usually emotional based lobbying, right? It's, hey, the big man is hurting the little man, and we need to do something about it, right? We need, rent control, right? We need, a longer time for a notice to pay or quit, right? Because times are hard right now because of inflation and so forth. Well, times are hard for everybody, right? Landlords are no different, right? Oftentimes, landlords have a W 2. Oftentimes, landlords, are, raising a family too. They have bills and expenses just like everybody else. They just chose to provide housing for people that, you know, need rent because, they don't own for one reason or another. So, who's the voice? Who is the voice for, the landlords, right? I mean, because right now they're talking about legislation for, rent control, to where they tell you how much you can charge and how much you can go up every year. I mean, who's for that, right? Who's for you saying that, hey, who's for anybody saying that, hey, I know you're not making money, but it doesn't matter. You can't go up on your rent any more than you already have because, you know that's the rule. Well, where'd the rule come from? Well, I don't know. It's just rules are rules, right? You know, it's like your mom saying, don't touch something just because you're not supposed to touch something. What difference does it make, right? So anyway, um, recently we have come up with, a landlord group, and it's called the Virginia Real Estate Investor Alliance Group. And so it was started by several people. It was started by Rich Lennon and Fred Kraus, and a lot of people on the board. And so it's got a lot of large people in our community, like, shoot, all kinds of people. I could just go through the list, but I'm not going to. So there's all kinds of impactful people in our community that are on this board and on these committees, and they're fighting for your rights. Okay. And it's the website is VREIA.org. Okay. And they just did a rollout last week, and it was a huge success. And they did a charity auction, and they're fighting for your rights. They're fighting for you to have the ability to be a landlord, be be a doer in our society and in our neighborhoods, and provide clean, safe, affordable housing, or whatever the price is, if somebody's willing to pay for it. If you're providing great value, then you should receive great value for it, right? But nobody's fighting for us right now. And so this group was started, last year, to actually be a voice for landlords, for real estate investors, to say, hey, you know, we provide value. We provide a great value. We provide housing to people that need it. And, you know, we should have a voice as to what legislation's coming, and tell these legislators what the impact is of, these bills that they're just bringing across their desk, and they don't know. They don't. There was some things passed last year, about, the wholesale law, that people didn't even know was in there, right? And so if we don't have a voice, like, what was created, then we're just not going to be able to win, right? We're gonna get legislated to a point to where there's no money left, and we're gonna get legislated to a point to where, people just don't find the value in being a landlord anymore. And that's going to be a bad day, because real estate is a way for, people to create wealth through assets, and create income through assets. So I encourage you guys to get involved. You guys can go to the, Real Estate Alliance Group. It's VREIA. I'll put it in the show notes. But you can, go to that group. You can see how you can be a part of it, whether you want to, join the group as a financial supporter, or whether you say, hey, I have a talent and ability of this, and I'd really love to provide that value to, the group, and to other real estate investors in this industry in our area. So that's it. Landlording isn't for everybody. Okay. If you're not willing to treat it like a business, you're just going to have a bad experience. I know, me, as being direct to seller buyer, um, one of our largest, client base last year was burnout landlords, and they were basically burnt out because the tenants were just taking advantage of them, and they were either not paying or they had destroyed the home. I mean, we hear this story time and time and time again. I had a tenant in there. What was the rent? Oh, it was too low. Well, why didn't you raise it? Well, I just didn't want to. I was trying to be a nice guy. That's not a business mindset. Okay. That's a sucker. Don't be a sucker. All right. Be a winner. All right. Treat it like a business. And that's all I got to say about that. So let's talk about next month. April is our next, hold on. I'll look at this thing. April the 3rd is our next deal maker event. And I should have done this before. I apologize. Yep. April 3rd, first Thursday of the month, is our next deal maker Richmond event. And we have got Joe Scaresi coming, and he is an animal. If you've ever seen somebody do so much stuff, you're like, how in the world does that guy do it? We all have 24 hours in a day, and I do like to sleep, but this guy must not sleep. This guy has so much going on. And what he's going to talk about, you can talk about anything you want, but what I'm going to focus him on talking about is asset-based lending. So he is a lender. Think about it as like a hard money lender or institutional private money lender. He does asset-based lending where it's non-recourse, and he has some lending in place where you can actually wrap it. So let's just say that you're a wrap lender and you've run out of your financial friends and you need to make a deal happen. You can go to Joe and say, hey, Joe, I need, this amount of money for this deal. He's going to go, all right, man, it'll be in your account on Tuesday, or it'll be wired to the attorney on Tuesday. And you're like, heck yeah, right? And so he's going to come share with you how you can do that, how you can be a part of his team. And, then you can pick his brain. He's a wealth of information, and we're really excited to have him. And that's going to be April 3rd at the Cave at the Hanover Airpark. Next week, Dealmaker is going to be in Richmond at Short Pump. It is the 26th to the 28th. And if you guys need to get your tickets, they're almost gone. It's not much time left. We're at Thursday. It's next Wednesday is when it starts. So less than a week away. You guys should make sure that you pay attention, get signed up, and, be in the room and with other deal makers and learn and network. And I will tell you this, the power in deal maker is amazing. That's how, my father got his start. That's how I got my start, was him bringing me there. I know so many people that got started in real estate because of deal maker and being in the room and the networking and the learning and the growing and seeing what you like. I mean, like, not everybody likes being a landlord, but some people like flipping. Some people like, trading contracts. Some people like buying notes, selling notes, right? Some people like whatever the heck you want to do, man. Contractor, whatever the heck, get involved, get in the room. I'll put a link in the description, and I will look forward to seeing you guys next week at Dealmaker in Richmond. It's going to be awesome. All right. Y'all have a great day. Again, my name is Forrest. I look forward to seeing everybody soon. And God bless. Y'all take care.